Hello boys and girls, welcome to my channel. I'm for Classic and welcome to BenchART. So for today what I do have in it is Battlefield 6 RedSec, a game developed by DICE, and it is using the latest Frostbite engine, which is Frostbite 4, which was also used in Skate. Alright, so my objective today is to see how this game performs on the oldie GTX 1650 Super, and the settings that I do recommend you to play this game. Let's start with that. It's to play at, if you play at 1080p, my suggestion it is to keep the game at the low settings and use FSR on its quality mode, which is essentially will be upscaling from 720p to 1080p. And one thing that I could immediately notice in the graphic settings is that the VRAM is being overboard in here, so it's clearly not enough, to surprise of no one, I guess, since 4 GB of VRAM is not really something. And it really says that for the minimum requirements you need a Ryzen 5 2600, which we are close to that, 16 gigs of RAM, and an RTX 2060 or an AMD Radeon RX 5600 XT with 6 GB. So clearly this game requires a minimum of 6 to use the whole settings. So legally we shouldn't be playing this with this card according to the system requirements and according to the options menu. Now, to your surprise though, the game is actually fairly playable. So I have performed some matches, but I only recorded one for this graph, and at the most settings we are able to get an experience above than 60 frames per second with an average of 72. So it's not perfect 60, mind you, but still it keeps above 60 FPS more often than it's not, okay? I also tested other settings like median settings and high settings. Both of these settings were using FSR in its quality mode, so both of the settings were tested upscaling from 720p, and both of those two settings, despite it was on median or high, I decided to reduce textures to low because obviously VRAM. And at the median settings I got an experience with an average of 60, but you can see that the game was dropping to something in between 50 to 70, something like that. So it should be a good experience if you have a FreeSync screen. Still, it's a multiplayer game. I would try to go above than 60, but it's really up to you. And when it comes to the eye settings, it spends most of its time in no man's lands, in pretty much in between 40 to 60. So my recommendation it is to play with the low settings. I do think that the low settings looks really good, none of the less. But let's take a little bit a closer look at the consistency of the frame rate. And as you can see, with the low settings, 70% of the frames was lower than 60 frames per second, which was for the most part. Median settings, 42% of the frames was lower than 60, so pretty much half of the frame rate was lower than 60. And with the high settings, 99% of the frames was lower than 60 frames per second in here. Well, regarding the game, I think it doesn't really require too much of an introduction. Battlefield RedSec, it's pretty much a free-to-play take on Warzone, but Battlefield. Okay, so it follows the same trends, so you can get weapons with different color stats, which means how advanced they are. You can upgrade weapons every time you have drops or you find certain items. You don't have gulag though. Every time you die, you have the second chance, which you immediately respawn after you die, so you don't need to fight for your chance. But that second chance actually goes away after a while that you are inside the map. Okay, I can't really say what really defines that there is no more second chances, but yeah, there are some stuff like that. So I think it's interesting, it works really well. I'm just too well adapted to Warzone, and I'm still not very good at Battlefield RedSec. Maybe I suck. Yeah, I do suck. But it runs really well for this card, assuming that we shouldn't be playing it in the first place. There are no texture issues, there are barely any stuttering, so it's a very playable experience, and surprisingly, to be honest, I could play like this easily for the rest of my life with this card, with these settings, because it's fine. I mean, you still have shadows, you don't have like potato graphics. The only thing that I feel that I'm missing most part, it's really the lack of reflections on the floor and the puddles, but essentially that's the thing that I mostly noticed that I was missing. Okay, so guys, I think that's all that I want to talk about Battlefield RedSec. If you want to play this game, go to Steam and download it through there. Remember, you need to have stuff like security boot enabled because of the Javelin anti-cheat. I'm not sure how good or bad this is working, but I don't think I did encounter any cheaters during this benchmark. Okay, so again, thank you a lot for watching, and I do hope to see you soon. Hope you keep enjoying the rest of the gameplay. Goodbye.
Danger close.